And I walk in his office, and I'll never forget, he looks at me and he says, "What now?" And I said, "You SOB." I said, "Don't tell me it's high blood pressure. My arm went paralyzed last night." Now I could move it in the morning when I woke up, but I could barely lift a cup of coffee with it, right? He rolls his eyes, says, "Sit down," tells me to sit down on his little table, pulls out his little, retinoscope, a little flashlight they use to look in your eye. He leans into my eye, looks, and he steps back. He says, "Oh my God, your brain's hemorrhaging."
Welcome to Going In Blind. I'm your host, Zach Tidwell, and today I'm speaking with a man whose professional football career resulted in 9 brain surgeries and a 38-year legal battle, George Visger. And to everyone at home, thank you for listening. Please take a second to help me grow the show so that I can keep delivering these conversations week after week for years to come. Subscribe, rate, and review the show in whatever podcasting app you're using right now, and check out the show notes to follow me on social media and YouTube as well. When you share your favorite episodes, tag me and use the hashtag GoingInBlind. You can also join my mailing list at zachtidwell.net. And if you know someone you think I should talk to, have them send me an email at contact.goinginblind@gmail.com. All right, George, we're rolling. I just wanted to thank you again for coming on. And we have so much here that we'll be able to get into. You and I were just talking about it a little before we started, but I think a safe place for us to begin, just to give people some context, is tell them a little bit about you, your history in the NFL, and what you're doing today, so that we can really start to get at the story and the important things that come up along the way.
You got it. So, okay, well, I started my football career when I was 11 in Pee Wee Pop Warner. My worst concussion I had was my third year at Pop Warner when I was knocked unconscious and hospitalized. Went on, played through on a nationally ranked undefeated high school team. 76, I went to University of Colorado on a football scholarship, majored in fisheries biology, played in the 77 Orange Bowl against the old Woody Hayes Ohio State Buckeyes. And then in 80, I was drafted by the Jets in the 6th round. And I had I had numerous concussions over the years. Never considered serious. I mean, I had played games, numerous games I don't remember playing in. In fact, one year at Colorado, I was actually, I carried the ball twice in my 12 years of football. I caught one pass in Pee Wee Pop Warner and had an interception in college against Oregon. I had a couple sacks, and I was player of the week. And I don't remember that game because I had my bell rung early in the game. And I don't remember any of this. I had a buddy playing on Oregon, and he told me years later we crossed paths. And he said, "Yeah," he goes, "you got laid out in the first quarter. They helped you off. You came back in, played the game." And we were playing in Boulder at Colorado, and his parents were like my second family, and they were out for the game, and he told me afterwards, I took him out to dinner, I showed him around, and that's all been erased. But anyways, by the Jets in 80, in the 6th round, got cut at the end of preseason and picked up by the Niners, like, I think about the 5th game of the season. We were playing Dallas that week. So it was a short week. The game was a Saturday game instead of Sunday. So I only had one day in pads and then in practice. And then they gave me a skinny little playbook and threw me in there. And first play I'm in early in the first quarter, I was playing defensive tackle. And it was goal line. I shot the gap, and it was a Dallas tight end trap where they let me get upfield. And the DT, they want you upfield. And then they would bring the tight end in motion, and I catch a helmet right to the temple, major concussion. I don't remember playing that game nor the Rams the following week. And a week and a half later, when my memory started coming back, the trainers and doctors laughingly told me I went through 15 or 20 smelling salts during the Dallas game. And then played, the rest of the season. And early in the following 81 Super Bowl season, I blew my knee out, had surgery on that, but I'd been having some head issues that whole off season and going into the season, as far as headaches and things like that. After my knee surgery, I was coming back off of that when I just started developing just major pounding headaches every night. I'd get a ball of light in front of each eyeball. My hearing would come and go at the beat of my heart. I would, and when I was puking every night, and I told the docs that I puked so hard. I told them I could hit the ball from 20 yards out and still chip porcelain. Well, all those are signs of intracranial pressure. Projectile vomiting, the ball of light in front of each eye was a sign that my brain was so swollen, it was putting pressure on my optic nerves. The fact my hearing would cut out with the beat of my heart was also showing intracranial pressure. So every time my heart beat and blood flowed, that was pinching off my auditory nerves. I go see the team docs at the Niners. They tell me it's high blood pressure. They put me on high blood pressure pills. Now I'm 20.
Which it was pressure on your brain and not in
Yeah,
your
yeah.
blood. Yeah.
It was pressure. They just missed it by a little bit, And they were freaking goofs. I mean, three guys from my '81 Super Bowl season uh, successfully sued our orthopedic surgeon for malpractice. So that tells you the kind of treatment we were getting. Three of them success just off that one team. And so
Yeah.
they diagnosed me with high blood pressure. 2.5 weeks while my brain's hemorrhaging, I'm on these high blood pressure pills, and I was just getting worse and worse. And we played Chicago uh, that day, and I was running with two guys in the team, Terry Totolo, who amazingly, after a 9-year NFL career, I find Terry living under an underpass in 2012.
Well,
He,
and I want to pause this here because I was trying to get you to give some background here. Basically, you've played football your entire life, all the way through up through the pro levels, even in the Super Bowl. Head trauma all throughout, to the extent where you've had 9 emergency brain surgeries, ended up winning a huge lawsuit against the NFL, and like you said, even your team doc was sued for malpractice. This is a huge issue that, which this is in the 80s. Even you said something to the effect of, yeah, I've had these concussions growing up, but none of them were serious. A lot of those would have been deemed serious if it wasn't the 80s. I mean,
Oh,
anyone looking,
exactly. I
yeah,
mean, yeah, people have asked me how many concussions have you had, and I always counter with diagnosed concussions.
yeah, and
Only one, even though I was knocked out in games,
yeah,
the only one
and
was in Pop Warner, you know?
and so with all of that, that brings us, this has been a decades long process, not just with you playing, but even you trying to get compensated for what you've been through.
And
And
it wasn't even compensation, it was just bringing awareness to what they get away with. They destroy families and players' lives for the love of their money.
yeah,
Oh,
and so I wanted to make sure that before we move forward, people have that context. I
right.
wanted to set that stage before we really go into the story, just so that people, and also your last name was said in the intro, but you didn't say it at what you talked. You're George Visger.
Right.
And so now with all of that there, I want to come back to, was it Terry Teratolo?
Terry Tolo.
Okay. So Terry Totolo,
Yep.
way after the fact, you found him under this underpass.
Yep. So yeah, so I found Terry in 2012 in Long Beach. He was from Long Beach, and I hadn't seen him in years. But I still had his phone number, and I was speaking. I was literally speaking at the International Hyperbaric Association's conference. It happened to be in the U.S. that year, and I've had like 243 hyperbaric treatments over the years, which have saved me.
Well, and
I
that was something I wanted to ask you about today, because I know a gentleman who he's completely blind now. He's blinded in a drag racing accident and has had a bunch of the stereotypical issues that we know to be associated with with severe brain injuries, and he said that that has been a game changer for him, specifically in terms of sleep and memory. Like he has one in his house now.
Does he really? Yep.
Yeah.
So, no, it was a game changer for me. Really kind of to jump forward a little bit. So in 2010, I believe I started doing hyperbarics after a 3-day neurocog evaluation at Dr. Heyman's clinic. And he just said, "Hey, you're going, hey, you're headed toward dementia right now." And so I started doing treatments, and people will you see one thing is hyperbaric oxygen treatment. At least when I was doing it, was only approved for 17 indications. So things like diabetic foot wounds, it's proven it'll restore vascular growth and regrow tissue, but it was never approved for traumatic brain injuries. And so, but Amen recommended them for me, and so every 40 treatments, I would fly back down to Amen's clinic in Southern Cal and undergo a 7-hour neurocog evaluation. And after my 160th treatment, and I was in my late 50s by then, and after my 160th treatment, my neurocog memory scores had improved 14.3%, and I quit all 4 dementia meds and the sleeping pills they had me on.
Wow.
I was just down to my anti-seizure pills. I mean, and people say, "Well, it doesn't work." I go, "Well, I'm a biologist, and I understand the scientific process.
Well, and
Here's."
can you, because hyperbaric chambers are increasing the atmospheric pressure, correct?
Yes,
So what do you know? Can you explain the mechanism of why that works?
absolutely. So, like your friend's chamber, the home chambers, use just air. If you go into a clinic where they have the hard chambers, so there you're breathing pure oxygen. I mean, you can't have any metal on when you go into this it's like a big test tube basically, and they lock you in it. So what it does is, hyperbaric oxygen treatments can increase mitochondrial growth and activity by 800%. So mitochondria in each one of your cells, mitochondria are like they're like the little engines in each one of your cells. So, and they produce ATP, which is the fuel that runs every cell in your body. So when you have a brain injury, a lot of our cells, they're still there, but they're just sequestered. They kind of they shut off.
Well, especially when there's swelling and all of this, you know, we see that with CTE. Anytime like you've got extra pressure in your brain going on.
Right. And so, hyperbaric oxygen treatments increase mitochondrial activity, ATP production. They cause new circulatory growth, brand new vascular growth into areas. That's why it works with diabetics. Um,
Oh.
you get brand new blood vessels and veins literally regrowing. It causes new growth of tissue. Um, it reduces inflammation in every cell in your body, including your brain.
Do you
So
know how,
TBIs. No,
you
go
go
ahead.
ahead. You go for it.
Yeah. So when you have TBIs, of course, your brain's inflamed, and so and all it is, it's just when they were treating me. Another thing too with the home chambers, they work great, but you can't get the pressure nor the pure oxygen like you would get in a clinic. So they treated me. I was under 2.6 atmospheres, so 2.6 times the normal pressure of atmosphere, and I was breathing pure oxygen.
For
And
how
I'm
long?
in there for like it would be an hour, almost an hour and a half, because it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to pressure up. And then you're in there for like 60 minutes, and it takes about another 10 to 15 minutes to pressure you down before they let you out. So
Okay.
it's about an hour and a half treatment, basically. And it literally improves and impacts every cell in your body. Um,
Are you sure it's pure oxygen? I thought pure oxygen was toxic.
Nope, nope.
Okay. Wow.
When you go into a hyperbaric chamber, it's pure oxygen. I mean, you literally have to wear cotton clothes. If you have anything that can cause a spark, you'll blow the building up.
Whoa.
I mean,
Well, yeah, because if it's pressurized, you're basically in a bomb. They're the potential bomb.
I mean, oxygen is incredibly volatile.
Yeah.
I mean, and so yeah, you can't have any no metal, no polyester clothes can cause a spark. Um,
That is so wild.
and
And
you know, and I tell people, I said, you know, back in 2010, I mean, doctors told me I had frontal lobe dementia. I was losing my home, my business, my family, which when I ended up losing everything anyway. But they said there's no cure. Need to turn in your driver's license, file for disability, and get your finances in order. I go, what are you telling? I had 3 small kids. I go, what are you telling me? Well, George, you'll never get any better. I ended up going down that next year to see Dr. Amen in Southern Cal, and he did a 3-day full-blown neurocog evaluation on me. So I had data, baseline data, and then every 40 hyperbarics, he recommended hyperbarics. After every 40 treatments, I would fly back down to Amen's clinic and they'd do a 7-hour neurocog evaluation. And after my 160th hyperbaric treatment, I had quit all 4 of my dementia meds and my neurocog memory scores had improved 14.3%.
yeah, which is
I was
massive.
late 50s and I was 30 something years post first brain surgery,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and with that, is that something that you still have to keep up with now? Are you still doing these treatments? Or like, do those benefits start to regress a little bit? Do you know any of that?
No, no, they don't regress, but, uh, of course, the you know, as when you're doing them, things are really cranking, and then I didn't do them for a couple few years, and then when I was in the Bay Area I was living at Center for Neural Skills for that's a whole long story after multiple legal battles to get in for treatment. We found another clinic down there, and I did a few with who's now my wife, with Jennifer. I met her down there, and then, but since we moved to Idaho about 2.5 years ago, and we've been looking around, we found a clinic just just like a couple weeks ago, and we popped in. And I'm talking with these folks. I said, "Hey, I want to get back in on this stuff, and I would love to help you guys promote it." You know, so we're going to start doing them again real soon. Um, I mean, it's just the things I got better with. I got off all the drugs. I took, like I said, 16 to 18 grams a day of purified omega-3 fish oils, working with Dr. Barry Sears. God bless you, Barry. He came through out of the blue. We got into doing just natural antioxidants like cranberry juices, blueberry juices. I started working my brain like a muscle, doing memory games and things. I got back in shape physically. I started doing some meditation, just visualizing getting better, positive things. I started praying a lot more. And after my 160th hyperbaric treatment, I quit all 4 of my dementia meds and my neurocog memory scores had improved over 14%.
Yeah.
I mean, and
Wow.
I continue. I think my last count, I had done 243 hyperbarics, um, since 2010 or 11, you know?
Yeah. And can you, I'm curious because if we go back, you were talking about the headaches and the nausea and
Right.
essentially all these symptoms of this intracranial pressure that you were having. At what point, because that was in the 83 Super Bowl season or 81
No, that
Super Bowl.
81 Super Bowl season. That was the
Okay.
first one.
And from there, what's the timeline to your first brain surgery and when they discover what's going on for
So
real?
I was just getting to that point. And I got sidetracked. Sorry. So I was just talking about how we had played Chicago that day, and I was on injury reserve. This was early in the 81 season because I just had knee surgery, and I'm rooming with 2 guys on the team. And after the game, so I grew up in Stockton, California, which is only about 2 hours from San Francisco.
Okay.
So I had some friends, some old high school friends come up for the game. Afterwards, we all went out, you know, we went out and had a few beers, you know, that's what we did. And, but by then, for the last few weeks, every night, you know, my head would start pounding. And, you know, by 10 or 11, I'd be puking my guts out. So we go out, it's probably 10:30 and I'm getting close to my puking time. And I told my friends and my 2 teammate roommates, I said, "Hey, guys, I'm heading back to the barn. You know, I feel like hell." So they stayed out. I go back to our apartment that I'm sharing with Terry and Scott, my teammates, and they come in after the bars close. It's probably 2:30, and I've just been puking my guts out. My eyesight's going, my hearing's going, my head's ready to explode. And T comes in, he goes, "Hey man, let me take you to the hospital." And again, and you'll understand this as a military vet, the warrior mentality. You never admit you're injured, you know, and so
Yeah, I mean, that's what got me. That's I told you before when we were talking, and I was kind of filling you in on me. Like
yep,
that's what got me in trouble with my depression is I wasn't speaking up because I thought pussy spoke up. I was
right.
like,
Well,
I'm not a
exactly.
bitch. I'm not gonna speak up. I can handle this. I'll just drink instead. And it
That
led me
is
down that path.
exactly it.
Yeah.
And between, and I never equate ball players to military vets because what we do is nowhere near. We say going to battle, but I know that's just a slap in the face to military vets, but it is very similar. We have the same mentality that you just don't admit you're hurt, you know? And so they kept checking on me that night, 2:30, 3:30. They'd come in. Let me take you to the hospital. Nah, that's high blood pressure. Take a couple more high blood pressure pills, and a couple minutes later, they're rolling around the bottom of the toilet, you know?
Yeah.
And finally, at about, I don't know, 4:35 in the morning, I mean, I'm laying in bed, my head is going to explode, I can't see, I can't hear, and all of a sudden, my right arm just curls up across my chest into a fist and just jams up under my chin, and I grab my hand, the fist, and I'm pulling my arm out. I'm thinking, man, that's a weird cramp. But when I grabbed my right arm, it was totally numb. I had no feeling that the other hand was grabbing it. And every time I let go of it, it would just curl back up into a fist and just jam up under my chin. So now I'm laying there, can't see, can't hear, puking my guts out, head's gonna explode, arms paralyzed. I'm thinking I'm dying now. And I literally started praying. And I said, "God, let Terry or Scott come in and check on me, but just like you said, I'm not gonna be a pussy and go wake them up because they play
Yeah.
a game today." That was my mentality.
And how old were you at the time?
I was 22. It's my second
Okay.
second year in the NFL,
Yeah.
and I was a young 22. I mean, I was like I hadn't even gotten close to my peak yet, and,
Yeah.
so I'm laying there I'm praying. It's like, "Lord, you know, let me get through this," and then I finally passed out. And the days after games, we played on Sunday, so on Mondays were a light day. We'd go in around 7:30 or so in the morning, and anyone that got dinged, you got treatment. I was on injury reserve, so I would do my treatment. There was a couple meetings, a light little workout, break a sweat, and then you're out of there. And then Tuesdays were our days off, right? So I go in, I do my rehab on my knee, and I wait till the team doc, whose nickname back then, even before he was sued, was Dr. D for Dr. Doom. So can you believe that? They had already nicknamed him before guys won malpractice suits against
Well,
him.
and it's crazy. These are supposed to be, elite doctors taking care of the world's highest performing athletes, and you've got
You would
this
think, wouldn't
dickhead
you?
on staff. Yeah.
I mean, it was like freaking ranch stock were treated better than we were. Shoot him up, put him on the field, tape him up. Someone else will take his place if he can't do it. That was the whole mentality. And so I waited till Doctor Doom saw everyone that got dinged the day before, and I go into his little office, which was in our locker room, which was that in Redwood City. That was our headquarters were. And I walk in his office, and I'll never forget. He looks at me and he says, "What now?" And I said, "You SOB." I said, "Don't tell me it's high blood pressure. My arm went paralyzed last night." Now I could move it in the morning when I woke up, but I could barely lift a cup of coffee with it, right? He rolls his eyes, says, "Sit down," tells me to sit down on his little table, pulls out his little retinoscope, a little flashlight they use to look in your eye. He leans into my eye, looks, and he steps back. He says, "Oh," and this is how my book starts. This is the first sentence. "Oh my God, your brain's hemorrhaging." I jump off the table, and this is how the first paragraph or 2, I jump off the table ready to kill him, and he's going, "No, no, no, wait, wait." He's got his hands out, and he's backing up, and I'm just going off on him. He reaches behind himself on the table, he's fumbling for the phone, he gets the phone, he starts dialing a couple numbers, dialing another, and I'm just pissed, right? He finally scribbles something on a piece of paper, rips it out of his notebook, hands it to me at arm's length, and this is where the comedy starts. He says, "Here, go home, lay down and drive yourself down to Stanford and see this neurologist this afternoon." So my next line in my book, I wrote, my first thought was, "Whew, must be one of those mild brain hemorrhages where he would have called an ambulance," you know?
Yeah, you sent me the I'm glad you told everyone that story because you sent me the intro to your book and I read it and I got a pretty big kick out of that. Because what, you're probably 300 pounds at the time?
No, no, I mean, I was and there weren't 300-pounders, well, back when I was playing. I was
Okay.
like 265, you know?
That's still massive.
Yeah, and so, and I go home, I lay down, my head and then the way my symptoms would work would I'd wake up with a headache every day that would just get progressively worse as the day, as I got later in the day till every evening, my head was gonna pop, blowing guts, and in the morning, the pressure would have subsided substantially. I'd still have a headache, and so I drive down to Stanford that afternoon. I go see this neurologist. He takes one look at me. He wants to do a CT brain scan, but the machine was booked up for a couple hours. Now, it was already in the afternoon when I got down there, right? So I told the and I'm starting to feel really crummy. And he goes, "Yeah, we won't get you in for a couple hours." I said, "All right, doc." I said, "I'll come back." And he looks at me. He goes, "You drove here?" I said, "Yeah, I've been driving like this for weeks." He goes, "You can't drive like this." And so we argue. I said, you know, back and forth. He finally convinces me to hang out in a room for a couple hours. And I'm pissed. It's like, I don't want to be hanging out. A couple hours later, they take me in, do a CT brain scan, rush me in, emergency brain surgery. So I had developed hydrocephalus, water on the brain, and my ventricles in the very middle of my brain were just filling up with fluid, crushing my brain from the inside out. So take me in, they do emergency, it's called a VP shunt that I have. So they drilled a hole in my skull, and this is all permanent. They ran a tube through my brain to the very middle of my brain, and the tip of it has to end right in one of the ventricles. And these ventricles are only little three-quarter, half-inch a diameter cavities in the middle of your brain. And then from the end of that tube, they run it back out my skull, under the skin, to the back of my head. They put a pressure pump in there. And then from that pressure pump, they ran a drain tube down side of my neck, through my right pectoral muscle, and down in my abdomen. So this little device drains spinal fluid out of my brain 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And when it goes out, I'm in a coma within a day, and I'll be dead shortly after unless they operate.
Jesus.
So the Niners, when they get a phone call from Stanford, "Hey, we had to operate," their attitude was, "Oh, shit." So they covered it up. Terry and Scott, my roommates, are coming. Nobody from the facility came to see me other than my two roommates, not even my position coach. You think he would have come in. I was one of his guys, right? Bill
Yeah.
Walsh, none of those guys. They didn't want to be seen at the neurosurgery award at Stanford, or people would ask questions. Terry and Scott would come in and they'd say, "Hey, Coach Walsh told the team today that you had a spinal test done and you're back in Stockton recuperating at your parents' house." And I'm laying there with tubes sticking out, While these guys are telling me this, I'm getting phone calls from the trainers and the team doctors. "Hey, we're looking into having a special made helmet to protect your shunt. You can keep playing."
Jesus.
So I was, and again, as the warrior mentality, you got to cut my head off or legs off, or I'm in. So I was all
Well,
in
and you've
plan.
you've worked your whole life for that.
Absolutely, I was going to be the savior of my family. My dad never even finished high school. He dropped out of high school and Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. He had a $1,200 uh, contract with they were the Philadelphia Knicks back then. He was a great basketball player, big tall kid. He was 6'6", and back then that was big. And Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. He lies about his age, enlists in the Navy, and then you were into the war was over. So after the war was over, his ship was decommissioned at Treasure Island, just off of Oakland, and he ended up meeting my mom. And he was from Michigan. He met my mom. She was serving cokes at a USO dance in Stockton, and he ended up marrying her. He never finished high school. Raised 6 of us kids. My 2 brothers and I, older brother, we all have college degrees. I have a sister that was CPA and ran her own firm. I mean, everybody did well, you know? But
Yeah.
I kind of got off track there, but
No, you're fine, man. I asked. I was curious.
yeah. So yeah, hopefully I answer your question. So that yeah, so I grew up in Stockton, and I was we had in Stockton, you're talking 112, 114 degrees during the summer. 6 of us kids, we grew up in a 2-bedroom, 1 bath, 0 air conditioned home, a little tiny sweat box. And when I was really young, my dad's buddy came over one day. My dad drove a beer truck, and his buddy came over, old Sam Color, and he said, "Damn it, Jack, you keep having all these kids, you need another bedroom." So they go out to the garage, and they rip the garage door off, and they frame it in, and Sam sends my dad to the hardware store to get a window, sheetrock, some what they didn't even insulate it. They put a window in where the garage door was, framed it in, sheetrocked it. They glued linoleum right to the concrete, and then they built 3 sets of built-in dressers, and we had 3 little tiny twin or single beds, a bed, little dresser, bed, little dresser. And in the back of the garage, and this was just a one-car garage, right? The back of the garage, they took 3 sheets of plywood, 4 by 8-foot sheets of plywood, stained them, hung them on rollers, put a closet rod all the way across the back of the garage, and then trimmed out the plywood. That was we had a big old closet. Each one of us had a 4-foot wide sheet of plywood
Yeah.
as a closet door that,
It's a different time, man.
oh, and
Is
we were
is he
fine,
is he still around?
My dad, no, he was
Yeah,
my
man.
hero. Dude,
He
my
sounds
parents,
like an interesting guy.
my folks were my heroes. I was so blessed. My
Yeah.
dad died early. He died at 73 with mouth and throat cancer, and my mom died at
Uh,
94, holding my hand and my little sister's hand, and us telling her to go home. You're done. You're finished with your work. It was the most
yeah,
beautiful send off you could imagine. And she was
man.
talking to everybody just a couple hours earlier.
That is wild.
Oh yeah, yeah. It was. I've had this amazingly blessed life. It's just been my whole journey. I'm sure I've had some stuff happen, but
Yeah.
I mean, I have met some of the greatest folks, and I have an amazing family. All my brothers and sisters were all very close. We lost one of my brothers, 2010. Um, just amazing family. Um, I could go on and on. The people
Well,
that
yeah. And I'm gonna try and bring us back on track a little
sure.
bit here. You told me beforehand, you were like, "Hey man, you might have to reel me back in." So I'm
Oh,
gonna
yeah.
reel you back in. We were we were talking about this is your the whole team was covering up what was going on. You mentioned that the only guys who were coming to see you were your roommates. Your coaches were calling and telling you one thing while they were telling the team other things. And so next step after that, you've had your first surgery. They're not telling anyone, and no telling how high up this silence order is coming from. It could have been the owners, but
Oh, it could have
you've
been. Yeah.
you've had your first surgery, and we know that all of that is going on already. What comes next?
Okay, so I come back after I get out of the hospital. I did go to Stockton for a week or so to get back on my feet, and then I come back to facilities. I'm to me, I'm still on the team. I'm on a workout because I'm thinking I'm still playing. Now I knew I would be on injury reserve the rest of that season, but I'm getting back in shape. So when I come back, by now I had 2 weeks in intensive care and probably a week or so in Stockton. When I show back up, all my teammates are going. Now, while I'm in the hospital, the 14 days, they cut Terry and they send Scott to New Orleans. The only guys on the team that knew what was going on, they're gone. Now, keep in mind, the NFL is a revolving door. When you can sign $100 million 5-year contract, you play one game, and when I was playing, there were 16 games a season. You play one game, they could cut you, and they owed you 1/16 of that first year's salary. The rest is all BS on paper.
Wow.
Now, baseball and basketball, those guys have real contracts. I mean, if you both agree to it, but NFL
Is that because the injury rate is so high? And I mean, you
probably. I mean,
guys are
they've set, yeah, and speaking injury rate, so they have everything skewed. toward their benefit. So in the NFL, you need 4 years to be vested, right? What other industry do you need to work 4 years before you're vested for your benefit? But you need 4 years to be vested, even though the average career is only 3.2 years.
That's why. That's why it has to be 4 years.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, they're only
Some
gonna take
it's
care of like the Tom Brady's and stuff like
Oh,
that.
right, those guys are set, you
Yeah.
know? But it's the tons of just blue collar nobodies like I was, you know? I was just scratching to make the roster, and, I mean, I would have been a good player, but I was young and still working my way up. And there's thousands of guys looking for a handful of jobs, you
Well,
know?
and I think that's so like part of why it's been so groundbreaking and so huge that college players can make money now.
Well,
I
but
mean,
I'm
they
no.
absolutely should be, especially in a sport like that where, like you said, that's a short career. If you've gone your whole life and you went through college and, if you know you come out of high school and you get pulled into some major football program, collegiate football program, and you know you're destined for the NFL, you might get a degree that's not something you're into because you're about to make it big in the NFL, but then you get broken in your first season and now you're fucked.
Well, exactly, exactly, and a lot of guys, they start skipping classes and taking just BS you need to pass when I was playing, minimum 12 units per semester to stay eligible. So and I crunched numbers, uh, a while ago on how many hours a week we would put in for football while you're supposedly getting a college education. So we'll start with a Saturday game. Okay. So you pregame meal at 7:30, meetings, taping, da 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 da, getting ready, kickoffs at 1, game done at say 5-ish, whatever. By the time you get, out of suited, treated up, treatments and all that stuff. Okay, that's Saturday. So that's the whole day's gone.
Well, and then there's a whole sorority full of girls waiting on you when you're done.
Well, then you have Sunday meetings and treatment, and then 3 days a week, you had to come in on your own with and lift weights for an hour 3 times a week, okay? Then practice would start at, let's say, 2:30. So with 120 guys in the team, you would need to get there, like, no later than 1:30 to get taped because you had to have minimum your ankles taped. Now, if you had any injuries, you had to get treatment and whatever else taped up. So by the time you get there, practice at 2:30 or 3, whatever it is, practice 2.5 hours, back in the locker room. Let's say it's 5:30, 5:30. Shower up. If you have any kind of injury, get treatment, hustle over to training table, eat dinner. Okay, we're done. Let's say at 6:45 for dinner. Every night or 4 nights a week, we would have meetings with your individual coaches watching film. So you hustle over to meetings from 7 till 8-ish. Okay. So you've been at it for 12.5 hours, and uh, now you're going to go study. And
Yeah,
I mean,
good luck. Yeah,
guys,
and it's not like you were just sitting at a desk for 12 hours. Like you're exhausted physically
yeah,
on top
yeah.
of everything else.
And
Yeah.
then in between all that, you're trying to hit your classes and stay eligible, and then then again, think, okay, so if we're playing out of state, which half of our games were out of state, so we would leave Friday. You missed all school Friday because we have to fly in somewhere. Let's say we fly back to Pennsylvania to play Penn State. You fly in on Friday, they bus us right over to the field. We have our Friday workout, which is a light practice. Bus you over to the hotel, pregame dinner and all that stuff in the morning. Same thing, same regiment. You play the game. By the time you're done at whatever time it is in the evening, then you jump on a plane. You fly back home. It could be 2 or 3 hour flight. Get back into Denver, then bus to Boulder. It's midnight sometimes when
Yeah.
you get home, you know, Saturday night and then Sunday it just starts all over again.
Well, I'm just gonna touch on you being a biologist now because I want to come back to it later. So I
Yep.
know that we'll have time to get to the other stuff. But I think that makes it so much more impressive that you became a biologist. Like that is, I I know I enjoyed science in high school, but even a entry level biology class in college is no joke. I was in school to get a nursing degree after I got out of the Marines, and it was that my first class that I took, or that first semester, the first class that I had my first semester was like biology 111, and I was shocked by how much harder it was. It's no joke. So
See, what's
that's just
funny, like with
impressive.
me, when I finally finished my degree after years of legalese battle, because I was drafted before I graduated. And so I still had 4 semesters of chemistry, 2 of physics, 2 of pre-calc left. And after a multi-year legal battle, in '86, I was the very first NFL player to ever won a work case because they threw me under the bus and didn't pay for my second, third brain surgeries, which were just 4 months after the Super Bowl. So I fought creditors. I didn't settle. I used Vocre. I left my medical open. Thank God I did. I had 6 more brain surgeries after I won. And I said, I want to use Voc Rehab and go back to school and complete my biology degree. And now by then now I'm living in Sacramento because I was working with my older brother. We were going to get a construction business role.
Well, those are high level classes that you have
Oh,
left too. And you're coming
well,
back after some time off.
we'll get this. So when I went back, I was, let's see, so 30. So I was like 27 when I finally won my suit. In one 10-month period, when I went back to school, I had 5 more emergency brain surgeries, several grand mal seizures. In fact, I had one seizure, a 50-something minute seizure. I'd been in organic chemistry, almost through it. My shunt blew out, brain surgery dropped out. Came back, took organic again, almost through it, shunt blew out, brain surgery dropped out. Came back, took it again, had brain surgery on a Saturday. I left the hospital 26 hours post-surgery, and Monday, I'm back in class with 40 staples in the back of my head. I'm not gonna drop out, right? And I
Yeah.
have like a 50-something minute grand mal seizure in class. I have to drop out of
Jesus.
school again. Now I have like 0 short-term memory. I developed dyslexia from my seizures. It was a freaking nightmare. It took me 5 more years to complete my degree.
Do
I
you
was
still have seizures now?
I've been on anti-seizure meds for years, and then I don't like taking any meds.
Yeah.
So, I had that monster seizure in class because after brain surgeries, you're real susceptible to seizures, so they would always put me on anti-seizure meds, and then after a few months, they wean you off of it. Well, after that one surgery, they forgot to put me on the meds. So here it is, a day or 2 after my brain surgery, it short circuits. So ever since then, even though I hate taking them, oh, I take it back. So I was on them for years, and then, I talked to docs. I said, "Listen," I said, "I don't have seizures. I had a seizure because you guys screwed up." I said, I'm not gonna diminish my life because all those meds just, they just take a toll on you."
Well, and yeah, there's a couple benefits that'll come from them, and then a laundry list of side effects.
And you know what? I don't even call them side effects. Those are the effects of the drugs. They
Those are
call them
the
side effects.
unintended or unideal effects of the drugs.
Why?
Yeah.
I mean, they say they're side effects. No, that is what your drug those are the effects your drugs have on human beings,
That's a great point. I've never
isn't
heard
it?
anyone say that before. That
I
is a
know, and
great
I
point.
got that. I stole that from my wife, Jennifer, and I told her I'm using that in all my talks, and I do use it in my talks now. So I didn't like the side effects, and so I had actually weaned myself off the seizure stuff a few years earlier. I went like 5 or 6 years perfectly fine. And one day, and by now I'm a wildlife biologist, I'm working for this company, Wildlands Inc., and we built mitigation banks and wetlands, and it was a great job. I was rebuilding habitat, doing wildlife studies, and I hadn't had a seizure or had taken a pill for years. And I'm out in the middle of one of our ranches. We're building wetlands, and I had just parked my truck. I mean, when I got hit with this freaking 50-something minute grand mal seizure.
You're
And
lucky you weren't still driving, dude.
oh, I know. So I thought, man, and by then I was married and I had kids. I'm thinking, man, if I was on the freeway, I could have killed somebody. So ever since then, I've just said, you know what, I'm staying on them, even though I don't like taking them.
It
And
seems like you need it though, off of what everything you've just said, it definitely, there's a pretty strong indication there that
And
that's
and
something you can't go without.
and what was crazy because that was like 5 or 6 or 7 years after I quit the meds, maybe even
Hmm.
longer than that. I mean, I went fine, and it was just out of the blue. So that was like, I could have killed somebody. So I'll
Yeah.
always stay on those. But other than that,
Well,
I really don't take anything. I take a lot of just supplements, you know?
yeah. Something else I really was curious to ask you about, and you definitely have a little more context for it now, so given our brief discussion before we started recording. But did you ever struggle after my motorcycle accident? I became very agitative and impulsive, and that's when I experienced depression for the first time and really spiraled. And we talked about that a little bit, but these are all telltale, stereotypical side effects of brain injuries. Did you ever have you at any point have you struggled with any of that stuff? I'm
100%. Those are
okay.
classic symptoms of TBIs. I had serious anger issues, impulse control. I have trouble with executive functioning. My first wife, Christy, and God bless her. Um, for years, I had no idea, but she was telling the doctors at toward the end. Well, we're divorced now, and Jennifer, I got married a couple years ago, but for years, I had no idea. Christy and the kids would always say, "Is the gentle giant coming home or Maximum George?" Because I would be agitated about stuff, and always one of the things that was always agitating was I was in a constant 24-hour-a-day fight with the travelers, the 40 hours work comp carrier to get bills paid. Nonstop battle, and I was always pissed. I'd go to get a prescription. Oh, they're not paying, and it would take weeks of me getting my attorney involved, blah, 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 and
Well, and it's more than that because these injuries can it's been shown they affect your ability to regulate your emotions. It's more than just, hey, there's a lot going on. Like you're impeded. Your brain's function is diminished. And yeah.
absolutely. You are 100% correct. And I mean, and depending on where your injury or injuries are to your brain, they impact everyone differently. But explosive, I mean, I had no idea that like um, when I had, did I even get into the second, third brain surgeries? 4 months
We
after.
talked about them a little bit. I've been trying to, there's been a little bit of wandering, but I'm trying to make sure that we're able to get to everything.
Got it. Okay. So, So, so after the first surgery, during the Super Bowl season, they told me I could still play, and then in the next 8 months, I got arrested 3 times, had never been in trouble in my life, and it was always when we'd go out and have a couple beer. First of all, I would get up in the morning sometimes to go to practice and no truck in front of my apartment. And I'm thinking, man, no one stole my truck. And I'd call people, did you see me last night? You see me? Yeah, we saw you over at, 276 Clubs bar. You punched some guy out through a chair through the window. I mean, totally out of character, completely out of character for me, right? And I'd think it was all BS. And I'd hitch a ride over to that bar, no truck. I'd keep calling people. Oh, yeah, you at this bar. And I'd hitch a ride. There's my truck be. I wouldn't even know how I got home.
Yeah.
Then I started ending up in jail 3 different times. I'd go out and have a couple beers with friends, and next thing I know, it's 5 or 6 hours later, and I'm not passed out. I'm standing in jail with 0 memory how I got there. And I would get what happened to us later on when we got a new neurosurgeon, after my 2nd, 3rd brain surgery right after the Super Bowl. My brother told him, "Man, George, he's always been such an easygoing guy, and now he just goes off a couple beers." And so they had me drink 2 beers and they did an EEG on me, electrodes on my brain. And just from 2 beers, I mean, you could watch the screen, just, man, brain, there were lines going everywhere. And I was fine. I wasn't drunk. And the doc goes, "You have brain seizures from alcohol. You can never drink again." And I quit in 82 and I've never had a problem.
Wow.
And I
I
know,
didn't even know that was a thing, but I've heard it explained as because addiction is also I mean, that's part of my story, but that's another telltale like development following brain injuries is
I,
that. And I recently heard it explained as you've got to understand these people, like, yes, part of that is the impulse control gone. And I'm not making excuses when I say this. I'm just this is a thing that we know, but that hey, these people are chasing, they're filling in the shortages that they're having. You're missing dopamine because of these imbalances. Okay, you're getting it from this alcohol or whatever
Absolutely.
your choice is. Yeah.
I mean, and that is a common thing. You know what? You know what it's like. You sometimes you get in such a deep dark hole, and I've luckily have never been in that super. I've been depressed, but my faith, I've always known. I never had a doubt that things wouldn't work out. Um, my hero, my 94-year-old mom, Big Rita. I mean, from the time I was little,
Big
she's
Rita.
oh, she was like not even when she passed, she wasn't even 5 foot tall. She was 5'3" at her peak, and I used to call her Big Rita my whole life. I was the only one that didn't call her mom, right? And there's a whole story there. She used to call me Georgie, and I hated it. So every time she'd say Georgie, I'd say, "What, Rita?" And it was a term of endearment, really. And
Yeah.
over the years, it just became I'd call her, "Hey, Big Rita." I'd say things like, "This your favorite child?" And she'd say, "Oh, yeah. Who died and put you at the top, at the front of the line?"
Sounds a little feisty.
Oh,
Sounds like fun.
she was
But
amazing. But,
you were
anyway,
talking about we were talking about the substance abuse becoming a
yeah.
thing.
So guys, they self-medicate, guys and women. I mean, they can't function like they used to. And boy, I tell a lot of my buddies, now that I've learned over the years, I tell them, you know what? If your wife tells you you're an ass when you're drinking, and your boss and your kids, you know what? You probably have the same issue I do, brain seizures from alcohol, because I know you're a good guy, but you can't drink. And of course, oh no, no. I said, no, you need to look in the mirror and you need not to drink. And I counsel folks, on occasion. And I mean, I've learned so much the last 40 something years living with this thing. Um, uh, Unfortunately, I'm an expert on it,
Yeah.
you know,
Do
but
you
God gave me this and this is what I'm supposed to do.
yeah. Do you listen to podcasts much?
My wife is a fanatical podcast listener, and I'm always teasing her. I mean, if I go in her room when she's working, she'll have somebody on. I'm like, "Gee, Merry Christmas." But she's starting to get me into some of these. And we'll get this. This podcast today is the 6th or 7th that I've done in the last probably 9 or 10 days.
Okay.
Because how like
Well,
I found you when I went on Facebook, I found the podcasters thing.
yeah.
I throw my little plug in there, and, actually,
Well,
and some of them are great. I mean, I love Joe Rogan's show.
and that's he recently, this has been within the past couple months. He had a doctor on named Dr. Mark Gordon, I believe it was. I might be getting that wrong, but a doctor who does a lot of TBI research. And I was just going to suggest I mean, it's a 3 hour long episode, so it's a time commitment, but you might get something out of it and listening to it and enjoy listening to it. That's why I was asking was specifically about
Well, I will,
that show.
and it's
Okay.
funny because I just sent my story into Rogan just probably a week. Everyone goes, "You should be on Rogan's
Yeah.
show," and I plus I have a book coming out, so it's like it'd be a great opportunity, and my book's gonna help some folks.
Well, and yeah, I plan on getting into that at some point. You
Yeah.
want to go ahead and throw it out there right now?
Yeah, so you can so it'll come out it's coming out next month, March, during Brain Injury Awareness
Which
Month.
this will come out middle of April, so it'll be out by that point.
Got it, got it, okay.
Yep.
So yep, and it's titled "Facing Giants: My 38-Year Battle," and it's on my 38-year, 9 NFL brain surgery, multiple grand mal seizure, 5 work comp hearing win, 8 work comp appeal win, 3 California Court of Appeal win battle to settle my work comp case.
With the NFL.
No, with the 49ers work comp carry the Travelers.
Okay.
The NFL suit was a whole separate one. So in 2010, a lot of things happened in my life in 10. Um, I had my small environmental consulting business. I had 3 other biologists working for me, and I was just my last 14 months I worked before I went on disability. I averaged 106 hours a week for 14 months straight, scrambling to try to keep my kids in our home and pay. I mean, it was just I would do big projects, big environmental projects, and then forget to bill them.
And this was leading up to the settlement finally coming through.
Oh yeah, this was years before the settlement. So this is 2010.
Okay.
And what I want to get at is, so I'm working real late one night, and I'm really close with about, oh, gosh darn, there's a half dozen or 10 of my old Colorado teammates from the 70s that not a day goes by I don't get multiple texts from these guys. I mean, there's a group with the Buff Brothers. We are so close, and I can get in later on about things they've done for me. But so I'm working real late one night, and one of my old teammates, his name was Pat Dunn. We call him the Ton of Dunn. And I get this text out of the blue. He goes, "Hey, Vis, check out GQ magazine, The Game Brain." Well, if I tell people looking at me, you can see I don't read GQ magazine. I'm a Levi's t-shirt, no combed hair. Well, I'm losing my hair anyway, but and so by the time I went to buy it, it was out of print. So I'm working in my office real late one night, like I normally did, and I pull it up online and I print it, and I still have that original copy from 2010 or 11, whenever it was. I still have it in my computer folder. It was titled. It was written by Jean Marie Laskus, and it was titled "The Game Brain: The NFL's Cover Up of Brain Injuries." And it was on Dr. Bennett O'Malley's first 24 NFL brains that he studied. 23 had the disease he discovered, CTE. So when I print that article out, and I mean, it was probably midnight. I'm in my little office, and I'm reading it, and it starts off, and I could tell you exactly. It starts off on a cold, still, foggy Pittsburgh day. I'm serious.
Well,
I
as in case we go into CTE here, chronic traumatic encephalitis, it is
encephalopathy. Yep.
encephalopathy.
Yes.
It is from recurring and
Repeated head trauma, and it causes inflammation in your neurons, and the neurons will get inflamed. And as they start to die, neurons are little microtubules, and part of the tubule is created. There's a thing called tau protein, TAU. So as the tubules, so as your brain sloshes around from repeated trauma, it doesn't have to be concussions, just repeated sloshing like you do 80 times a day in practice, you know, they get inflamed, and as those neurons start to die, those tau proteins slough off, and they create what they call amyloid plaques. And if you could just picture, it's like clumps of stuff that is starting to block off neurons in your brain. And not only do they block them off, again, if you can picture an amyloid plaque like a little ember, and if you blow on an ember, you know how it'll spread. Well, that's what happens. Once you get that stuff going in your brain, once those tau slough off and the amyloid plaques start to grow, there's no stopping it. It will slowly, continually destroy neurons and brain areas. And the problem with CTE, it impacts different people in different parts of their brain.
I mean, fucking Aaron Hernandez, man.
Exactly. He was functioning fine. I mean, functioning fine. He's killing people, but if you were to talk to him on the street, you know, you wouldn't know.
Well, but yeah, I mean, all this stuff he was doing, and again, it's not justifying what he did. I think
No.
people will, judging by the rest of our conversation, know that that's not what's happening here. As I dive into this, I'm just pointing this as an example. That man was exhibiting all the telltale signs of
Yeah,
these brain injuries, and he winds up murdering people and then kills himself in prison.
I'm telling you, man. Um, so when I was reading that article on Bennett O'Malley when he discovered, and the first one he worked on was Mike Webster, Pittsburgh Steeler, 4 Super Bowl champ, and Webster. I used to emulate him. We're Pop Warner. We had these Pee Wee Pop Warner. We had the black and gold uniforms like the Steelers. That was in the 70s when the Steelers were rolling. So we used to like emulate those guys. Hey, I'm Mike Webster. We're little kids. Well, when I was drafted by the Jets, third game of preseason, we were playing Steelers, the defending Super Bowl champs, and I started, and I lined up over my idol, Mike Webster. Okay, I'm like, holy cow, man, I'm playing over the guy I used to emulate. And then years later, when I read that GQ article, and the first brain O'Malley worked on was Mike Webster's.
Yeah, and another thing for people at home, I actually wanted to ask you about this too. I don't know. I feel like I might have heard somewhere that they're starting to be able to test for this while people are still living, but at least up until recently, if that is true, that's the CTE is really the only thing that they can diagnose post-mortem
Well,
after peeling your skull off and looking into your brain.
no, I know they've been looking for a way to diagnose it, but as of that I know of, I don't know. I know they've got several drugs they're trying, but, I don't think they have anything yet,
Okay.
you know? So, I mean, I'm reading about how Webster died using a stun gun on his head to try to sleep. Well, I mean, that's and I've had now I'm very, very close friends with Dr. Bennett O'Malley ever since that article. So as I'm reading it, I'm writing notes in the side and the columns up because I had printed that whole article out. It was like 23 pages. And I'm writing notes and I flip to the next guide. This one's suicide. This one. And I get done reading it that night. I'm thinking, man, I got to find this Dr. O'Malley. Well, when the article was written, he was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And again, God has had his hand on me so many times in this journey. And so I'm gonna try to track down O'Malley. I find him an hour later. I mean, I find his phone number. He is the head coroner pathologist for San Joaquin County in Lodi, which is like 40 minutes from my office in Sacramento. And I get his cell phone number. I call. I get his voicemail. Yes, and he has a real strong Nigerian accent. Yeah, this is Dr. Mono. Thank you so much for calling. Sorry I missed your call. Please leave a message. And this is how he ends his voicemail. And I knew I had the right guy. He ended his voicemail with, and remember, God loves you. And I'm thinking, okay, I've got a God-fearing man. He's not going to be swayed by money. So I leave him this voicemail and I'm all pumped up. Dr. Mall, name's George Visger. I've had 9 NFL brain surgeries, blah, 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 blah. So he calls me within, I don't know, half hour. And he says, George, I'd love to meet with you. He says, but I can't tonight. He goes, I'm speaking at UC Davis Medical Center, which was 15 minutes from my office. He goes, I won't be done. I go, what time are you done? He goes, oh, I won't be finished till 7:30. I go, I'll see you at 7:35 in the lobby. I drive over there. He gets done. We go out to dinner. It's midnight. We are bouncing stories back and forth off each other. What they did to him, what they did. And at one point, he stops and he looks at me and he'll talk about himself in the third sense. He says, why do they attack Dr. O'Malley? And I said, Bennett, I said, this is America. I said, they don't give a shit about the human carnage. All they care about is money. I said, I'll give you 9 billion reasons why, which is what the NFL grossed back then. Now it's 19 billion last I saw. And he couldn't fathom that. It was like, well, don't they want to know that their business is killing their employees? I said, no, you're the last guy in the world they want to hear from. So he and I became partners, warriors, shoulder to shoulder. We have presented together at conferences over the years. He wrote a foreword for my book coming out, or wrote a little thing for it, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Bennett, great man, love him to death, good close friend of mine, and he's been in this battle with me for years.
Yeah. I'd love to pick that dude's brain.
Oh, he's awesome. You know, he has 5 different. I'm sure you saw the movie Concussion. Well, I'm sorry, you can't.
You're fine, man. You're totally fine.
But you can hear it.
Yeah.
Seeing it, you need the visuals though too. But he has 5 different degrees, including a master's in business. I mean, he is brilliant and just a good man. I mean, good man. Bennett and I love the guy. He's one of my teammates, man, in this battle to bring about justice and educate people and help people avoid the carnage that
Yeah.
some of us have
Well,
been through.
I was curious about this because I didn't know. I planned on asking you if you had kids, but you mentioned it earlier. You have 3
Yeah.
kids.
Yep.
Did you let any of them play football growing up?
I have 3 kids, 2 daughters, and my youngest is my son, Jack.
Okay.
And so growing up, so get this. So I played on amazing teams at every level. My first year I ever played, I played on the 1970 West Stockton Bear Cubs in Stockton, California. 29 kids on our team. 3 of us signed NFL contracts in 1980, and our safety was a kid by the name of Von Hayes who went on to a Major League Baseball all-star career. So we had,
That's just insane.
it's like millions to one. To have one NFL player on a Pee Wee team would probably be hundreds of thousands to one odds. 4 professional athletes on my little Pee Wee team. The first 5, and I was a skinny, scrawny, slow kid growing up. My nickname on the Bear Cubs, the coaches nicknamed me Clang because I was so knock-kneed, they said they could hear my knees clang clear across the field when I ran. But I was just tough and intense, and I knew I wanted to be the greatest NFL player ever lived, and I wanted to be the next Jacques Cousteau biologist. Those were my dreams, you know? So I started both ways. Uh, our first year, our first 5 games I ever played, we scored something like 241 or 251 points to our opponent's 0.
That's so gross.
And I'm going, "I love this game." You know? So I played on an amazing Pee Wee team. When we won the championship, we had an 8-hour bus ride clear up to Eureka, Northern Cal, Humboldt Stadium. We played the Eel River Loggers and the Junior Redwood Bowl. I mean, it was like an over.
Sure. I think we're getting on another tangent. I want it. I, I was asking. I was just curious with your experience
Oh,
if
okay, I'm
your
sorry. Yeah.
son had ever played.
So he had heard that. He heard my high school championships, the Orange Bowl, Super Bowl. And when we did that 3-day evaluation at Dr. Amon's clinic around 2010 or so, a lot happened in 10 or 11. I had taken my wife at the time, Christy, and Jack was my youngest, because I wanted them to talk to the docs when I wasn't around. We're walking out of
To
there.
give their perspectives on
Yeah.
like the maximum George that you were talking about and stuff.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
as a military, that too, you know, as a warrior, you just like, if someone asks you, "Oh, I'm good. How you doing, Visc?" "I'm good." And people behind me are just shaking their head going, "He's not good." So I wanted them to talk to the docs, and we're walking out of Dr. Amon's clinic after 3 days of full-blown evaluation, and Christy and Jack sat in his office with his main doc and Amon, and they went over all my results, and Dr. Amon said, "It is a miracle that you even function with the amount of brain damage you have." We walk out of there, and that was like a 7 or 8-hour drive back home to Sac. We don't even get to the truck, and Christy says, "Jack will never play football." And of course, my son looks up at me, and I'm guessing he was 10 or 11, maybe, you know, maybe a little older. And he looks up at me all wide-eyed, and I said, "Bud, I can't argue with your mom." I said,
Yeah.
"What this has done to me and done to our family," I told him, I said, "You have it. You've got the Visger it." I said, "Whatever you set your mind to, you're gonna be great at, but you know what?
Yes.
You don't need to beat your brains up to do it."
Well, and that's I don't have kids, but I've with the head injuries and stuff that I've had, I played football growing up. I played sports year round, but
Yeah.
I've had that thought like, man, I don't think I would. I played lacrosse too, and I was like,
Right.
if I had a son that wanted to play football, I think I'd point him to lacrosse. It's still
That
very violent. You still
is
get your
still violent.
jollies off, but it's not these head-to-head slammings, play after play after play. It's
Well, it's not
different.
a sport that's designed to use your head to inflict punishment on the opponents.
Yeah.
You use your head to strike blows, and they're shocked it causes brain damage. I
Well, yeah, it's especially it's like these guys just keep getting bigger and
almost
faster, and I mean, these are titans just slamming into each other at 40
and
miles an hour.
that's another thing too. You brought up a great point. These guys nowadays, I mean, when I was playing our Super Bowl team, we didn't even have anybody 280 pounds. We had a couple guys in the 270. Nowadays, I mean, average lineman 315, 340. But the thing is, they're athletic and they're running like 4.8 40s, you know,
Yeah,
with 28-inch vertical jump. I mean, they're not big, giant, fat turds.
they're just freak athletes. I mean,
Oh,
they
and
really are.
the kinetic energy they generate. Kinetic energy is 1/2 the mass times velocity squared. So these guys are not only much more huge, they're fast. I mean, they are generating ungodly amounts of. They put accelerometers in helmets. This was years ago, and I've used this in my talks. They put accelerometers in helmets in NFL players. An average defensive lineman like me would register 20 to 20. Okay, first of all, a jet fighter pilot will pass out while he's accelerating between 5 and 6 G's, right? 5 to 6 times the force of gravity. A defensive tackle in the NFL will average 20 to 25 hits of 20 to 25 G's per game. And defensive backs and linebackers have registered hits up to almost 200 times 200 G's. Now, the reason they don't pass out, a jet fighter is a long, extended acceleration, whereas the ball players, it's boom, right?
It's
But
instantaneous and then it's over. Yeah.
that boom, man, your brain is called coup, counter coup. It hits the front of your brain. It sloshes up the skull, sloshes to the back and forth. I mean, you'll get bleeding on the front and the back of your brain because it sloshes around.
Well, and it doesn't take that massive trauma to cause CTE. It's the smaller hits over and over and over and over that they think are even specifically for CTE, these contributors. And that's why I think that's why I wanted to ask you about if you let your son play, because I think these discussions are important for parents to hear
Nope.
who maybe didn't grow up playing sports or aren't aware of this stuff and are having kids that are entering these ages. And, you know, it's still it's part of the risk of playing, but I do think you need to know the risks going into it, especially if it's your kid, because your kid's not going to understand the risks.
See, and that's the thing too. It's like the scariest part are these parents or these coaches that try to live vicariously through their kids, you know, because they couldn't do it themselves. So they're gonna do it through their players or their kids, and they're pushing them into doing things. It's like so my son, Jack, God bless, he's a little stud. Wasn't a big kid either. I mean, really is. He lettered in 4 sports, scholar athlete. Right now, he's in his last semester. He's getting a degree in environmental engineering. Already been hired.
Another smart dude.
Oh, and because I told him back then, the day we walked out of Amon's, I said, "Bud, I said anything you set your mind to, you'll be great because you have that it." When I say it, it's like I always used to have a motto: whatever it takes, I will do to get there."
Yeah,
I
that
will,
mentality goes so far. I
yeah.
mean, obviously, if you're 5'2" and 100 pounds, you're not going to play in the NFL. But like that, if you have that drive, it will carry you through life.
Absolutely. There's a bazillion great athletes out there that never make it in the NFL because they don't have it. You know what? They don't have it in the heart. They don't have it the drive. They have tons of physical ability, but everyone in the NFL has physical ability, you know? So, I mean, it's like anything in business. I mean, there's a bazillion super smart people out there, but it's the ones that really have that drive to be better and to push.
Yeah, and you're
Push
applying
it.
yourself
Yeah.
when no one else is, and in areas that other people aren't willing to go, and just keeping your eye on the prize with stuff. I mean, that really will. Those two things, and the doing the work that no one else is willing to do it, or doing it harder than anyone else is doing it,
Oh,
is what will get you there.
I mean, the hardest thing I ever did was finishing my biology degree. When I had all those brain surgeries in that 10-month period, 5 of them, and developed dyslexia and short-term memory issues, I would head to the library after class, and I would spend, and no exaggeration, minimum 6, 8, sometimes 10 or 11 hours a day in the library. And I learned one of the talks I give throughout the country is called Coping Mechanisms, Surviving a Brain Damaged by Football. And I learned that one, I can't filter out background stimulus. So in order to study, I would have to find a cubicle in the very back of the library against the wall where no one would walk by me, hopefully. I couldn't even, like, if I had my pen on the table when I'm, reading chemistry equations, my mind would be going, oh, the pen's blue, the cap's off. You know what I mean? I can't. So I couldn't have anything on the table, couldn't have any noise. I get distracted. Home, couldn't study because I'd be sitting there thinking, I'd see a magazine out of the corner of my eye on the floor that I wanted to read, and I'd thinking about food in the refrigerator, you know? So I learned ways to just power through stuff. I have
And
posted.
now you're speaking and you've written a whole book despite having developed dyslexia. I
Right,
mean,
yeah, and man,
yeah.
I mean, right now, you can't see, but I've got my notebook out. I'm taking notes as we're talking because I won't remember this conversation.
Mm,
Some of
that
it I
makes sense. I could hear you fiddling with stuff throughout. I'm like, what is he doing, man?
yeah, no, I'm
'Cause-
taking notes as we're
well, I was thinking because I had told you beforehand, like, hey, I don't release the video. You can pick your nose or whatever. I was like, is he
yeah.
just scratching his ass right now? What is he doing?
No, I've got page and a half of notes right now
Okay.
on I wrote
Well,
down, Joe Rogan had Mark,
Mark
Gordon.
Gordon.
Yep.
Yep.
TBI
Well,
doctor on. Just things like, I mean, and I've learned over the years, these are some of my coping mechanisms.
yeah.
Um,
Well, and that's the huge thing too. I think, no one would have blamed you if you didn't do anything with your life after this. And people make so many fucking excuses for themselves, man. I mean,
Thank you.
you have these things that happen to you in life. You have a choice on if you're going to learn how to adapt to it and overcome it, move past it, and compensate for whatever shortcomings come with it. So get off your fucking ass and do it. And I just that's why I wanted to talk to you. I mean,
Thank you.
aside, go ahead.
No, I mean, no, I don't want to cut you off. So
No, I was just gonna say, aside from the wealth of knowledge that I was sure you would be, and that all these things that I wanted to talk to you about. I mean, you're the kind of person that I'm interested in talking to because of that. I mean, that
and
is,
vice versa too. Let me tell you, I admire you, bud. I truly do. You're taking a negative and turning it into positive. And that is what life's all about. I do motivational talks and I tell crowds, everybody has a cross to bear. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's what's his name that started freaking Google, or I don't even can't even remember names. They all have things you have no idea what's going on in their life.
yeah,
It's either you can let that cross drag you down, or you can turn that son of a bitch around and sharpen the end of it and use it as a weapon to blast your way through stuff to get to where you want to succeed. You can
yeah.
use it as a burden or use it as, use it. I tell folks too, even as a kid, I was so competitive because of my older brothers, um, and both of them played college ball, and my goals, I mean, I wanted to be better than them, period, and I loved them to death. They were my closest friends in life. In fact, when we lost my brother Mel on February 26th, 2010, my oldest brother Gomez, we call him Gomez because he looks like Gomez on the Addams Family, and, to this day, every time we talk, I just texted him a little bit ago. We ended up with LMS, and that stands for last man standing. And we know because my 2 brothers and I were so close, um, I mean, we would look forward to anything get together, but, it's again, I got off track. I don't know why I'm going there, but, I'm really
Well,
excited.
that's fine. I was trying to, it seemed like it was a good place to close it out because we were just talking about how people, you have your choices in life
Oh,
and
yeah.
life will throw stuff at you. And I thought that would actually be a good place to put the bow on it and remind people where they can find you for both speaking and your book.
Absolutely. So they can go to georgevisger.com and you go to that website, you scroll down to the very bottom is where you can pre-order. We're almost out, but so it'll be published in March, but, the first 200 copies are limited edition. I'm personally signing them to each person that orders them, and they're hardcover. And, so you can go to georgevisger.com, but that also has a whole web page on booking me for speaking. It has information on me. It has, things like that. You can go to that. And I started a, traumatic brain injury consulting business in 2010, and they can go to the visgergroup.org. Now, I Googled it the other day because I don't go on it enough anymore.
Yeah.
And there's the Visger group, I think it's .com, that they do like kitchen remodels. I'm going, and there's very few Visgers in the country. My dad is from Michigan, right? There are hardly any Visgers. And as I pulled it up, and they're from back east, so there's probably some of my uncle's great kids or great grandkids.
Some distant tie. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but the visgergroup.com or .org is mine,
Okay. Awesome.
or georgevisger.com. That you can get
Okay.
information to.
And it's Visker, correct?
The VISG is in George ER.
Ger. Okay. Well, hopefully no one heard me mispronouncing it because I'm pretty sure I said Visker or maybe I intended to, but yeah. Well,
Everybody does, you know.
yeah. Well, I have the excuse of I can't see it and I listen to my phone talk really, really
You-
fast, so it gets mispronounced. But thank you so much for sharing all that and making a point to share this stuff out into the wider world because more people need to hear it. And it, like you said,
Absolutely.
it can save people from uh, a
And there
lot of pain and struggle.
absolutely, and there's help out there, folks. You're not in this alone. There's a lot of us and you out there, and you got to circle the wagons, man. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help. A lot of us are too damn proud, or we're too. I ask for help all the time now. Thank God I've learned to do that. You
Yeah,
know,
I say that with mental health stuff. You got to speak up. You really do. You owe it to yourself to speak up, and can and will get better. There's other people out there who have done it. But
yep.
well, thanks again, man.
Hey, I appreciate. Thanks for having me on, Zach. And we'll stay in touch and communication. So, when the book comes out, I'll get you a book.
Thanks everyone at home for listening to another episode of Going In Blind. Please remember, if you loved what you heard here, I'd love it if you'd take a second and rate and review the show wherever you listened, then share this around because more people need to hear about what George is doing. Bye.